The Big Reveal, a mystery solved by Detective Jane Rodriguez. Chapter 1: The Crime Scene. Our protagonist, Detective Jane Rodriguez, had seen her fair share of crime scenes, but something about this one left her feeling uneasy. The house was empty, but the disarray of overturned furniture, scattered papers, and a broken vase indicated a struggle had taken place. As she walked through the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. In the living room, she found a photo album open on the coffee table. The pictures showed a woman with bright green eyes and a warm smile, surrounded by friends and family. This was the victim, Lisa Smith. The more Rodriguez looked through the album, the more she felt a sense of sadness and loss for the woman she never knew. She continued her search through the house, hoping to find any clues that might lead her to Lisa or the person responsible for her disappearance. In the bedroom, she found a dresser with its drawers open and clothes strewn about. A quick glance told her that most of the clothes were gone. This was not a simple case of running away. As Rodriguez headed towards the front door, she noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under the couch. It was a handwritten note that read, "I know what you did, Lisa. You'll pay for it." This was the first potential lead in the case. Rodriguez secured the note in an evidence bag and made a note to speak with Lisa's friends and family, to gather more information about her life. As she left the house, she couldn't help but feel that Lisa's disappearance was more than just a missing persons case. There was a mystery to solve, and she was determined to find the answers. Chapter 2: A Clue in the Attic. After the initial investigation, Detective Rodriguez decided to search the victim's home for any clues. As she entered the house, she noticed a strange smell emanating from the attic. Curious, she made her way up the stairs to investigate. As she entered the attic, she was surprised to see it was in pristine condition, unlike the rest of the house. Everything was neatly organized, and there was no dust in sight. However, her attention was quickly drawn to a small wooden box on one of the shelves. She approached the box and opened it carefully, revealing a set of old letters tied together with a ribbon. She read through them and found out that they were love letters exchanged between the victim and her ex-husband. The letters had a date that matched the time when the victim filed for divorce. Detective Rodriguez realized that the letters could be a vital piece of evidence. She took them with her, making sure to document their discovery in her report. As she left the attic, she noticed a neighbor watching her from across the street. The neighbor quickly turned away when they noticed Detective Rodriguez staring back. The detective made a mental note to interview the neighbor later. Back at the station, Detective Rodriguez examined the letters carefully. She noticed a small stain on one of the letters and sent it for analysis. As the lab analyzed the stain, Detective Rodriguez decided to follow up on the neighbor. She went to their house and introduced herself. After some small talk, she asked if they had noticed anything unusual around the victim's house in the days leading up to the disappearance. The neighbor hesitated before admitting that they had seen a suspicious-looking man lurking around the house a few days before the disappearance. Detective Rodriguez took note of the description and thanked the neighbor before leaving. She had a new lead and was determined to find out who this mysterious man was. Chapter 3: the suspicious alibi. Detective Jane Rodriguez had a list of potential suspects for the disappearance of James Parker. She scheduled interviews with each of them to get more information and clues that could lead her to the truth. She started with James' business partner, Robert. Robert arrived at the police station dressed in a suit, looking calm and collected. He told Jane that he was at his office during the time of James' disappearance, and he had no reason to harm him. But when Jane asked him to provide some documents and emails to verify his alibi, he started to hesitate and fumble with his words. Jane knew that she needed to dig deeper into Robert's alibi. She contacted his colleagues and found out that he had taken an extended lunch break on the day of James' disappearance. The security footage showed him leaving the office building and returning almost 2 hours later. When Jane confronted Robert with this information, he finally broke down and admitted that he had met with James on that day. He had a big argument with him about the company's finances, and James threatened to go to the authorities. Robert lost his temper and hit James, causing him to fall and hit his head on a sharp object. He panicked and left James' body in a nearby park. Jane arrested Robert for the murder of James Parker. She felt satisfied that she had uncovered the truth and brought the killer to justice. As she walked out of the interrogation room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still not right. There were still unanswered questions, and Jane knew that she needed to keep digging to find out the full story. Chapter 4: A Break in the Case. Detective Jane Rodriguez had been working around the clock, following every lead and clue she could find to solve the mysterious disappearance of Harold Brown. She had interviewed all the potential suspects, checked their alibis, and searched for any physical evidence that could link them to the crime. But despite her best efforts, she was no closer to finding Harold than she was when she first started the investigation. That was until she received a tip from an anonymous source. The tipster had reported seeing a man matching Harold's description at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much to go on, but it was the first solid lead she had received in weeks. Detective Rodriguez rushed to the motel, hoping to find Harold alive and well. As she approached the door of the room the tipster had specified, she heard a commotion inside. She quickly drew her gun and kicked the door open, ready for anything. To her surprise, she found Harold Brown tied up and gagged in the corner of the room. He was disheveled and clearly had not been treated well during his captivity. Standing over him was a man she recognized as one of the potential suspects from her investigation. Without hesitation, Detective Rodriguez tackled the suspect to the ground and placed him under arrest. She then called for backup to ensure the suspect was secured and to provide medical assistance to Harold. As it turned out, the suspect had kidnapped Harold to extort money from him. He had planned to hold Harold captive until his family paid the ransom. However, Detective Rodriguez's timely intervention had saved Harold's life and brought his captor to justice. The case was finally closed, and Detective Rodriguez had successfully solved the mysterious disappearance of Harold Brown. She was hailed as a hero by the media and the community, but for her, it was just another day on the job. She knew that there were always more cases to solve and more criminals to catch, but for now, She could rest easy knowing that justice had been served. Chapter 5: The Big Reveal. Detective Rodriguez sat at her desk, staring at the evidence board. She had been going over the case for days, trying to make sense of all the clues and evidence. The killer was still out there, and she knew that time was running out. She had interviewed all the potential suspects and had a pretty good idea of who the killer was, but she needed more evidence to prove it. She decided to go back to the crime scene one last time, hoping to find something that she had missed before. As she walked through the victim's home, she noticed something out of place. A picture frame was sitting on the table, but it wasn't there before. She picked it up and saw a hidden compartment behind the photo. Inside, she found a small journal with entries from the victim. The journal revealed that the victim had been meeting someone in secret, someone who had been blackmailing her for months. She had finally decided to end the relationship and had planned to confront the blackmailer the night she was killed. With this new information, Detective Rodriguez had everything she needed to make an arrest. She gathered all the suspects in a room and presented the evidence. As she laid out the details, she could see the killer's face turn pale. The killer tried to deny it at first, but Detective Rodriguez had too much evidence against them. Finally, they broke down and confessed to the murder. The killer had been the victim's blackmailer and had killed her to keep her from exposing them. As Detective Rodriguez walked out of the police station, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had solved the case and brought the killer to justice. She knew that she had made a difference in the victim's family's life, and that was all that mattered. The case had been a challenging one, but it had taught her a valuable lesson. No matter how difficult the case may seem, she would never give up. She would always keep digging for the truth, no matter how deep she had to go.